The massive crystal spires of Elysia Prime glowed blue in the light of the setting sun. In the Grand Council chamber, 12 Elysian elders sat in a perfect circle, their slender bodies tense with worry. Their skin, normally a calm shade of azure, had paled to an almost ghostly white. Fear had that effect on Elysians. High Elder Xerath rose from his seat. His four-fingered hands trembled as he activated the communication array at the center of the chamber. "This message is for the Galactic Alliance Council," Xerath said, his voice breaking. "The Voran Collective has destroyed 3 more of our outer colonies. Millions of our people are dead or missing. We have no weapons to fight back. We beg for your aid before our civilization is consumed." The hologram flickered as the message was sent across the stars. Xerath slumped back into his seat. The Elysians had spent 10,000 years building a society based on art, philosophy, and scientific discovery. They had eliminated war, hunger, and disease, but they had also eliminated their ability to defend themselves. "Will anyone answer?" asked Elder Thala, her large eyes brimming with tears. "The Alliance must help us," Xerath replied, though doubt crept into his voice. "We have given them our medicine, our technology. They owe us this." 2 light-years away, aboard Orbital Command Station Delta, Admiral Frank Carter watched the Elysian message for the 3rd time. He ran a hand through his salt and pepper hair and turned to face the screen showing Earth's ambassador to the Galactic Alliance. "The Elysians are in real trouble this time, Diane," he said. "The Voran don't take prisoners. They're like locusts with spaceships." Ambassador Diane Powell nodded. Unlike the Admiral's worn uniform, her crisp blue suit projected authority and calm. "The Alliance Council is meeting in 1 hour. Most of them want to send peacekeepers. As if you can negotiate with the Voran." Frank snorted. "Peacekeepers? Those blue diplomats wouldn't last 5 minutes against the Voran. What are you recommending?" "The only thing that will work." Diane's face was grim. "We send in a kill team." The Admiral's eyes widened. "The Alliance won't approve that. They still think humans are too violent, too primitive. Let them think what they want," Diane replied. "Earth has been part of this alliance for only 15 years. But in those 15 years, who did they call when pirates attacked their shipping lanes? Who did they call when the Meridian Plague needed containment? They called us because we get results." Frank studied the Elysian distress call again. The Elysians were the oldest race in the Alliance, respected for their wisdom and scientific achievements. They were also physically fragile and completely defenseless. "I'll start making calls," he said finally. "Boyd is fishing in Montana. Martinez is training recruits in New Mexico. The others are scattered, but I can have them assembled within 48 hours. "Good," Diane said. "I'll handle the politics." 3 hours later, Diane stood before the Galactic Alliance Council. Representatives from 27 spacefaring civilizations sat in curved rows, looking down at her. Most were humanoid, though some required special atmosphere chambers or gravity adjustments. The Valaran delegate, a being with feathered tentacles, spoke first. "The Elysian situation is tragic, but we cannot approve military action without attempting diplomacy." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Diane stepped forward. At 5'6", she was shorter than most delegates, but her voice carried clearly. "The Voran have consumed 3 Elysian worlds. They liquefied the inhabitants for food. What exactly do you plan to say to them?" Uncomfortable silence followed. The Garan representative, an insect-like being with compound eyes, clicked its mandibles. "Humans always rush to violence. This is why your species was monitored for so long before admission to the Alliance." Ian smiled thinly. "Yes, our capacity for violence concerned you. And yet, here we are, being asked to use that same capacity to save your friends." She tapped her datapad, and horrific images appeared on the main screen. Elysian bodies partially dissolved, hive structures built from the remains of their cities, Voran warriors dragging children toward processing centers. "This is happening right now," she said. "While we debate, more Elysians die." The Elysian representative, Valen, rose shakily to his feet. He was the youngest council member, sent to replace the previous representative who had been visiting one of the fallen colonies. "My people have never asked for military intervention before," he said softly. "We have always believed in peaceful resolution, but there can be no peace with the Voran. They do not see us as people. They see us as food." The council leader, a massive being with gray skin and 4 arms, leaned forward. "What exactly are you proposing, Ambassador Powell?" "Earth will send a specialized team to assess and neutralize the Voran threat," Diane said carefully, avoiding the term kill team that might alarm the council. "How many ships?" asked the Valeran. "We don't need a fleet," Diane replied. "Just 1 vessel and a small team." Laughter erupted from several delegates. "The Voran have over 50 hive ships." Garen exclaimed. "You think 1 human vessel can stop them?" Diane's expression didn't change. "Yes." The laughter died down as delegates studied her confident face. "The council will vote," the leader announced after a moment. "Those in favor of accepting Earth's assistance?" Hands, tentacles, and appendages of various kinds rose into the air. The vote was unanimous, though several delegates seemed reluctant. "Very well," the leader said. "Earth's intervention is approved." As the session ended, Diane approached Valen, the Elysian representative. His blue skin had a sickly gray tinge. "Thank you," he whispered. "My people will be forever grateful." Diane placed a hand gently on his shoulder. "You asked for our help," she said softly. "Remember that." The confusion in his large eyes was evident. "Of course we will remember. You are saving us." "That's not what I mean," Diane replied. "What comes next? It won't be like Elysian stories of heroism and glory. Humans fight differently." "I don't understand." "You will." She stepped back and tapped her communicator. "Admiral, we have approval. Deploy the Valkyrie." 1,000 light-years away, in a cabin beside a Montana lake, Colonel Samuel Boyd's fishing rod dipped into the water. His weathered face was peaceful for the first time in years. The communicator in his pocket buzzed, shattering the silence. He didn't need to check the message. Only 1 person would contact him on this channel. Boyd sighed, reeled in his line, and looked at the mountains one last time. He had known retirement wouldn't last. It never did for men like him. Inside the cabin, he opened a hidden panel in the floor and pulled out a black case. His fingers moved across the biometric lock, and it opened with a soft hiss. Inside was a uniform with no insignia, and a weapon unlike any found in civilian hands. He touched the grip of the gun, feeling the familiar weight. "So," he said to the empty room, "who needs killing this time?" Samuel Boyd stepped onto the transport ship with nothing but a small bag. The young pilot's eyes widened when she saw him. "Colonel Boyd? I thought you were retired, sir." Boyd gave her a thin smile. "So did I." The trip to Orbital Station Delta took less than 30 minutes. Boyd spent it looking out the window at Earth below. Green and blue and perfect. Most people down there had no idea what lurked in the darkness beyond their solar system. He hoped they never would. Admiral Frank Carter was waiting when Boyd stepped off the transport. The 2 men had served together for 20 years. "Sam," Frank said, extending his hand. "Sorry to pull you back in." Boyd shook it firmly. "No, you're not." Frank laughed. "You're right, I'm not. Come on, the briefing room is this way." They walked through the gleaming corridors of the station. Personnel stopped and stared as Boyd passed. His reputation went before him. In the briefing room, a holographic display showed a star system Boyd didn't recognize. Frank waved his hand, and the image zoomed in on a blue-green planet surrounded by ships shaped like pointed eggs. "This is Elysia Prime," Frank explained. "Home to the oldest species in the Galactic Alliance. Peaceful, advanced, but completely defenseless." Boyd studied the image. "And those ships?" "Voran Collective. Think of them as space locusts. They strip planets bare, consume everything organic. They've already taken 3 Elysian colony worlds." Boyd nodded slowly. "Why us? The Alliance has peacekeepers." Frank snorted. "Peacekeepers. Against the Voran. Might as well send in crossing guards. So they want a real military response? They want you, Frank corrected. And your team. Boyd's face hardened. My team is scattered all over Earth. Not anymore. Frank tapped a button on the table. A door slid open and 4 people walked in. Master Sergeant Olivia Martinez entered first, her black hair pulled back in a tight bun. Even in standard uniform, she moved like a predator. She nodded at Boyd. Colonel, fishing not working out for you. Behind her came Lieutenant Eric Daniels, looking younger than his 32 years, the medical insignia still visible on his sleeve. His smile was warm, but his eyes were cold. Chief Warrant Officer Peter Goldman followed, carrying a tablet and already muttering calculations to himself. His gray beard was longer than regulation allowed, but no one would dare tell him that. Last came communications specialist Kate Wright, barely 25 but with skills that had made her legendary. In cyber warfare, she saluted crisply. The band's back together, Boyd said dryly. Where's Russell? Major Russell is already on the USS Valkyrie, prepping your insertion, Frank explained. You leave in 6 hours. Boyd turned to his team. I assume you've all been briefed? Martinez cracked her knuckles. Bugs eating aliens. We go squish the bugs. Simple enough. It's not that simple, Frank corrected. He touched the holographic display again. A new image appeared. An insect-like creature standing upright on 2 legs, with 4 arms and a hard exoskeleton. Its head was dominated by compound eyes and sharp mandibles. This is a Voran warrior drone. 7 feet tall, exoskeleton can stop most standard rounds. They don't feel pain, they don't retreat, and they don't negotiate. Daniels leaned forward. Weaknesses? Joints and eye clusters, Frank replied. They communicate through pheromones and low-frequency sounds. They operate on a hive mind structure. Each invasion force is controlled by a thought director. Goldman had stopped muttering and was staring at the hologram with intense interest. Fascinating. Biological or technological communication? Both, Frank said. Their tech is grown, not built. Wright tapped her fingers on the table. Can we disrupt their comms? That's what we're hoping, Frank replied. But first, we need intel. The Elysians know almost nothing about Voran military capabilities. Boyd crossed his arms. So what's the mission? Frank looked each team member in the eye before answering. You'll deploy to Elysia Prime on the USS Valkyrie. Official mission is to evaluate the threat and advise the Elysian Defense Forces. Martinez laughed. What defense forces? You said they were pacifists. Exactly, Frank said grimly. Your real mission is to find a way to stop the Voran advance, by any means necessary. The Alliance Council doesn't know the details and they don't want to know. Boyd understood immediately. We're the dirty little secret. The violent humans they keep around for when diplomacy fails. Frank didn't deny it. Ambassador Powell has secured you full operational freedom. No restrictions, no oversight. Just results. Daniels frowned. Sir, what about rules of engagement? There are no rules in this engagement, Lieutenant, Frank replied. The Voran are consuming an entire species. Your job is to make them stop. The room fell silent as everyone absorbed the implications. After a moment, Boyd spoke. What resources do we have? The Valkyrie is being loaded with everything you might need, Frank said. Latest combat suits, experimental weapons, enough firepower to level a city. Goldman whistled softly. One more thing, Frank added. He pressed. Another button and a new hologram appeared. A vial of green liquid. This is Project Omega, Frank said quietly. Developed after our encounter with the Meridian Plague. It's a targeted bioweapon, designed to be modified for specific genetic patterns. Wright's eyes widened. You want us to deploy a bioweapon? Want you to have options, Frank corrected. This stays between us. The Alliance has banned bioweapons, but they've never faced extinction before. Boyd studied the hologram of the vial. This could kill them all? Potentially, Frank said. Or sterilize them, or just make them very sick. Goldman will handle the specifics if it comes to that. Boyd looked at his team. Martinez seemed unfazed, Goldman intrigued, Daniels resolute. Only Wright showed signs of discomfort. Questions? Boyd asked. No one spoke. All right, he said. Gear up and be at Docking Bay 7 in 4 hours. As the team filed out, Frank held Boyd back. Sam, there's something else you should know. The Voran, they're not just eating the Elysians, we think they're incorporating their DNA. Evolving. Boyd's face darkened. All the more reason to stop them now. 4 hours later, the team assembled at Docking Bay 7. Each wore a standard jumpsuit that concealed their specialized equipment. They carried small personal bags, but nothing else. Everything they needed was already on the Valkyrie. The ship itself was a marvel of human engineering, sleek, black, and nearly invisible to most sensors. It had been designed for one purpose, to deliver small teams deep into enemy territory and bring them back alive. Major Alan Russell met them at the airlock. His perfectly pressed uniform and carefully combed hair made him look more like an accountant than a soldier, but Boyd knew his strategic mind was unmatched. Colonel, Russell said with a nod, the ship is ready, and I've plotted 3 potential insertion points on Elysia Prime. Boyd nodded back. Good to see you, Alan. As the team boarded, Boyd paused for a last look at the station, at humanity's foothold among the stars. Then he stepped through the airlock. The Valkyrie hummed to life around them. In the darkness of space, its black hull became nearly invisible as it pulled away from the station and accelerated toward the jump point. Humanity's kill team was on the hunt. The USS Valkyrie dropped out of faster-than-light travel with barely a shudder. Through the main view screen, the team saw Elysia Prime for the first time. It was beautiful, a world of blue oceans and emerald continents. But it was also surrounded by over 50 Voran ships, their egg-shaped hulls forming a net around the planet. That's a lot of bugs, Martinez said, looking over Russell's shoulder at the tactical display. Russell nodded grimly. Main Voran fleet, they're positioning for a final assault on the capital city. Boyd studied the display. How are the Elysians still holding out? They have planetary shields, Russell explained. Advanced technology, but they're failing. Our estimates give them 3 days at most. Boyd turned to Wright. Can we communicate with the Elysian leadership without the Voran detecting us? Wright was already at her station, fingers dancing across her console. Yes, sir, the Valkyrie's stealth systems are holding. I've established a secure channel to the Elysian Grand Council chamber. The main screen flickered, and the face of High Elder Zirith appeared. His blue skin had a grayish tinge of exhaustion, and his large eyes widened at the sight of the humans. You are the help the Alliance sent? He asked, his voice a mix of hope and confusion. Just one ship? Boyd stepped forward. I'm Colonel Samuel Boyd of Earth. This is my team. We're here to assess the situation and help you deal with the Voran threat. Zirith looked at each human in turn. We expected more. Martinez suppressed a smile. Goldman didn't bother hiding his. We work better in small numbers, Boyd said simply. We need to meet with your leadership as soon as possible. Zirith seemed uncertain but nodded. I will send coordinates for a safe landing zone near our capital, city. Our shields can open briefly to allow your ship through. The screen went dark, and Boyd turned to his team. Suit up, full combat gear. Sir? Daniels questioned. Shouldn't we go in soft? We don't want to scare the Elysians. Boyd shook his head. They need to understand what they've asked for. No point hiding it. 30 minutes later, the Valkyrie descended through a small gap in the planetary shields. Below them stretched the Elysian capital, a city of crystal spires and floating gardens. It would have been breathtaking if not for the signs of panic. Even from the air, they could see Elysians rushing through the streets carrying whatever they could. The ship landed in a circular plaza surrounded by tall buildings. A delegation of Elysians waited, led by Zirith. They stepped back in alarm as the humans emerged from the ship. The team wore powered combat armor, black sleek suits that added to their height and bulk. Each suit was marked with subdued Earth insignia and equipped with weapon systems visible on shoulders and forearms. Their faces were hidden behind polarized visors, By the ancestors, one Elysian whispered. They look like war machines. Boyd approached Xerath and removed his helmet. The others followed suit. High Elder, Boyd said with a respectful nod. We need to speak privately about the Voran situation. Xerath seemed relieved to see human faces. Of course, please follow me to the council chambers. As they walked through the city, Elysian civilians stopped to stare. Some looked hopeful, others fearful. Children peeked from behind their parents, pointing at the armored humans. Goldman leaned toward Wright. They've never seen soldiers before, he murmured. Look at their architecture. No defensive positions, no barricades. Even their doors are designed for beauty, not security. Wright nodded. A whole civilization without war. It's amazing they survived this long. The council chamber was a vast room with a domed ceiling that showed the sky above, including the ominous shapes of Voran ships. 12 Elysian elders sat in a circle with Xerath taking his place among them. These are the humans sent by the Alliance, Xerath announced. Boyd stepped forward while his team spread out around the room's perimeter, automatically taking defensive positions. We understand your situation, Boyd began. But we need more information about the Voran attacks. What have you tried so far? An elder with deeper blue skin spoke up. We attempted communication when they first arrived. They responded by destroying our outpost on Elysia's moon. We sent our scientists to study their technology. None returned. Any weaknesses you've observed? Russell asked. Anything that slowed them down? The elders looked at each other in confusion. We have no weapons, another elder said. No way to fight back. Boyd's face remained neutral, but he exchanged a glance with Martinez. What about the colonies they've already taken? Boyd asked. Any survivors? Any reports? Xerath touched a crystal on the table, and a holographic image appeared, an Elysian with burns on his blue skin and terror in his eyes. This transmission came from our colony on Elysia 3 just before it fell, Xerath explained. The recording played. The Elysian spoke rapidly, panic in his voice. They're processing us, liquefying adults for immediate consumption, taking children for something else. They have processing centers, huge organic structures. The Voran inside are different, larger, with more limbs. They communicate with the warrior drones through. The transmission cut off abruptly. Silence fell over the chamber. Processing centers, Boyd repeated. We need to see one. Xerath looked shocked. They are on conquered worlds. We cannot reach them. We can, Boyd said simply. We have a stealth ship. We'll go to the nearest fallen colony and gather intelligence, the elders murmured among themselves. This is not what we expected, one finally said. We thought the Alliance would send a fleet to drive away the Voran. Boyd stepped closer to the table. You didn't call us to drive them away, he said, his voice hard. You called us because your people are being eaten. Driving them away just means they'll come back, later stronger. We're here to end this threat. End? Xerath asked. You mean? Yes, Boyd said. That's exactly what I mean. The elders looked disturbed. One elder stood up. We are a peaceful people. We do not condone violence, even against those who harm us. Boyd's patience visibly thinned. Then why did you call for help? No one answered. We'll depart for Elysia 3 immediately, Boyd continued. When we return, be prepared to make difficult decisions. As the team turned to leave, Xerath hurried after them. Colonel, he said quietly, some of us understand what must be done. We have never faced such choices before. Boyd's expression softened slightly. No one should have to, that's why we're here. Back aboard the Valkyrie, the team prepared for their mission to Elysia 3. Martinez checked weapons, Daniels packed medical supplies, Goldman calibrated their sensors to detect Voran biosignatures, and Wright analyzed Elysian data on the colony's layout. Russell approached Boyd in the ship's small command center. They're not ready for what we're going to do. Boyd looked up from the tactical display. No, but they asked for our help. They'll understand soon enough. The Valkyrie rose silently from the Elysian capital, slipped through the shields, and accelerated toward Elysia 3, a world now in Varan hands. Stealth systems at maximum, Wright reported. We'll reach the colony in 3 hours. Boyd nodded. Everyone get some rest. I have a feeling we won't be sleeping much after we see what's waiting for us. As the ship hurtled through space, Boyd stared at the image of the Voran warrior on his display. Humanity had encountered many alien species, some friendly, some hostile. But never before had they faced an enemy that saw other sentient beings simply as food. You picked the wrong meal, he said quietly to the image, and we're about to give you indigestion. Elysia 3 hung in space like a jewel with a bite taken out of it. Once a vibrant colony world of forests and lakes, half the planet now appeared gray and lifeless. The Voran had already consumed much of its resources. The Valkyrie approached, under full stealth, gliding silently into the planet's atmosphere. From the bridge, the team could see the remains of the main Elysian settlement. Crystal buildings lay shattered, gardens were trampled, and rising above it all was something new, a massive structure that looked like it was made of hardened amber. The processing center, Boyd said grimly. Take us down a mile south of it. We'll approach on foot. Goldman studied his sensor readings and frowned. Sir, I'm detecting thousands of Varan life signs in and around that structure, and something else in the center. Something big. The thought director, Russell suggested. The controlling intelligence for this invasion force. Boyd nodded. Then that's our primary target. If we can take it out, the rest might fall into disarray. The Valkyrie landed in a small clearing surrounded by blue-leafed trees. The team performed final equipment checks before disembarking. Each member carried specialized gear in addition to their powered armor. Martinez, you have the charges? Boyd asked. She patted her equipment pack. Enough to turn that hive into a crater. Daniel's medkit and biosamples gear? Daniels nodded. Ready, sir. Goldman, sensors and analysis equipment. All set. I can identify the thought director once we're inside. Right communication disruptors? She tapped her forearm unit. Ready to scramble whatever passes for Varan communications. Russell, you'll coordinate from the ship. Keep the engines hot. If things go bad, we may need a quick extraction. Russell looked like he wanted to object, but nodded. Understood, Colonel. The team moved through the forest in perfect silence, their armor adapting to the surroundings. As they approached the settlement's edge, they got their first close look at the Idesior Voran. The creatures moved on 2 legs but had forearms ending in sharp claws. Their exoskeletons were a mottled brown, and their heads were dominated by compound eyes and clicking mandibles. They stood over 7 feet tall and moved with surprising speed, patrolling the ruins of the Elysian city. They're bigger than the images we saw, Daniels whispered. Wright's visor displayed data as she studied the creatures. Different coloration patterns, too. I think they're communicating through those color changes on their abdomens. The team crouched behind the ruins of a building as a patrol passed just feet away. The Voran stopped suddenly, their antennae twitching. They sensed something, Goldman whispered. Martinez raised her weapon, but Boyd held up his hand. After a tense moment, the Voran moved on. Let's keep moving, Boyd ordered. The processing center is our target. They made their way through the ruined city, witnessing scenes of destruction and hints of horror. Blue blood dried on crystal walls, half-eaten food still on tables, toys abandoned in the streets. The Elysians had been taken completely by surprise. The processing center loomed larger as they approached. Up close they could see it wasn't built of amber but of a hardened, transparent resin. Inside, dark shapes moved constantly. There's an opening at the base, Wright pointed. Looks like they bring in supplies that way. No one commented on her choice of words. Boyd studied the entrance. We'll need a distraction. Martinez smiled behind her visor. That's my department. She removed a small device from her pack and programmed it quickly. Sonic disruptor. Should draw most of them to the east side. Set it for 5 minutes, Boyd ordered. We'll enter from the west. As they circled the massive structure, they passed what appeared to be holding pens. Inside, a few dozen Elysians sat huddled together, their blue skin pale with fear. Guards patrolled the perimeter. Survivors? Daniels whispered. We need to help them. Boyd shook his head. Mission first. We take out the thought director, then we can save them. A distant boom sounded as Martinez's device activated. Immediately, dozens of Voran warriors rushed toward the noise, leaving the western entrance lightly guarded. Now, Boyd ordered. The team moved with practiced precision. Wright fired a specialized dart at the remaining guard, hitting it precisely in the joint between neck and thorax. The creature dropped without a sound. Inside the processing center was a nightmare of alien biology. The walls pulsed with what looked like veins. The floor was sticky with resin, and everywhere were Voran of different sizes and shapes, some warriors, others smaller with specialized limbs for specific tasks. Different castes, Goldman whispered, scanning everything. Fascinating structure, less admiring, more moving, Martinez muttered. They proceeded deeper into the structure, avoiding patrols when possible, silently eliminating them when necessary. The further in they went, the warmer and more humid it became. We're getting close to something big, Goldman reported, checking his scanner. Massive life sign ahead. They entered a vast chamber at the center of the structure, and there, suspended from the ceiling by countless tendrils, hung the thought director. It was nothing like the warrior drones. 20 feet across, its bloated body resembled a massive brain with a thin, transparent skin. Pulsing lights moved across its surface in complex patterns. Dozens of eyes of different sizes opened and closed across its bulk. From its underside, thousands of thin tentacles descended, connecting to smaller Voran who stood motionless below it. Mother of God, Daniels breathed. It's connecting directly to their nervous systems, Goldman said, his scientific curiosity overcoming his disgust. Controlling them like puppets, Boyd surveyed the chamber. Martinez, place charges at those support columns. Wright, prepare to jam any outgoing signals. We're going to... He stopped as the thought director's many eyes suddenly all opened at once. Every eye turned directly to the humans. It sees us, Wright warned. A high-pitched sound filled their heads, bypassing their ears entirely. Telepathic communication, Goldman said, wincing. It's trying to... Images flooded their minds. A dying world. A species facing extinction. The desperate journey through space. The discovery that other sentient beings could sustain them. The Voran history played out in their consciousness. It's showing us why they do this, Daniels said. They were engineered by another species to be perfect consumers, then abandoned when they consumed their creator's enemies. Boyd shook his head to clear it. Understanding doesn't mean forgiveness. He raised his weapon and fired directly at the massive entity. The shot hit one of its larger eyes, causing it to emit a psychic scream that dropped the team to their knees. Instantly, every Voran in the chamber turned toward them. The warrior drones rushed forward while smaller Voran scrambled up the walls. Cover! Boyd shouted. The team took defensive positions as the first wave hit them. Martinez's weapon fired in controlled bursts, each shot finding a joint or eye cluster. Daniels deployed a defensive barrier that bought them precious seconds. Goldman and Wright worked frantically on their devices. Martinez, the charges, Boyd called as he fired into the advancing horde. Working on it, she replied, ducking under, a Voran's claws and sliding past it. Goldman looked up from his scanner. Sir, if we kill it, the psychic backlash might affect the entire hive network. Good, Boyd replied, smashing the butt of his weapon into a drone's face. Wright suddenly shouted in triumph. Got it! She activated her forearm device, and immediately, the coordinated Voran attack faltered. The drones began moving erratically, bumping into each other. Their communications are scrambled, she explained. Martinez appeared from the chaos, sliding to cover beside Boyd. Charges placed, 2-minute timer. Time to leave, Boyd ordered. Back the way we came, double time. The team fought their way out of the chamber as the thought director writhed above them, its many eyes blinking frantically as it tried to reassert control over the hive. They raced through the twisting corridors of the processing center, the timer counting down in their visors. Behind them, the Voran were recovering from the communication disruption, organizing into pursuit groups. 30 seconds, Martinez called. They burst from the entrance and sprinted toward the holding pens. What are you doing? Russell demanded, over the comm. The ship is the other way. Getting the survivors, Boyd replied. Be ready for extraction at these coordinates. As they reached the pens, Daniels and Wright worked to open the gates while Boyd, Martinez, and Goldman held off. The pursuing Voran. 10 seconds, Martinez warned. The Elysian prisoners stumbled out, confused and terrified. Run, Boyd ordered them, pointing away from the processing center. Follow us. A massive explosion tore through the night as the charges detonated. The processing center collapsed inward, a psychic scream echoing in their minds as the thought, Director died. The Voran pursuers stopped in their tracks, some falling to the ground, others running in circles or attacking each other. The Valkyrie appeared overhead, landing in a clear area nearby. Boyd's team herded the Elysians toward the ship as the processing center continued to collapse, secondary explosions ripping through its structure. Everyone aboard, Boyd ordered as the ramp descended. As the last Elysian stumbled up the ramp, Boyd looked back at the burning hive. The first phase of their mission was complete. The thought director was dead. Now they had to convince the Elysians that this was just the beginning. The Valkyrie sped back toward Elysia Prime, its hold crowded with the 37 Elysian survivors they had rescued. The blue-skinned aliens huddled together, whispering among themselves and casting nervous glances at the humans. Daniels moved among them, treating injuries with his medical kit. One young female Elysian watched him work with curious eyes. You fight like the ancient warriors in our stories, she said suddenly. We thought such things were only myths. Daniels smiled slightly as he bandaged a cut on her arm. Sometimes, myths exist for a reason. In the ship's command center, Boyd and his team reviewed the data they had gathered from the processing center. Goldman's excitement was barely contained as he displayed his findings on the main screen. The thought director's death caused a complete breakdown in the hive structure, he explained. The warrior drones lost all coordination. But the effect will be temporary. How temporary? Boyd asked. Goldman adjusted his glasses. Based on what we saw, a new thought director will emerge within a week. The Voran on Elysia 3 will reorganize, but they'll be weaker without the resources they expected to harvest from the colony. Wright leaned forward. More importantly, I managed to extract their communication frequencies. We can jam them effectively now. Russell studied the tactical display. That gives us an advantage, but the main Voran fleet around Elysia Prime has at least a dozen thought directors. We can't kill them all one by one. Boyd's face was grim. No, we need to strike at the source. Martinez looked up from cleaning her weapon. The Voran homeworld? It's the only way to end this permanently, Boyd replied. We need to locate it. Wright tapped her console. The data I pulled suggests it's in a system about 20 light years from here. But sir, attacking their homeworld would mean... She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. Extinction, Boyd said quietly. Or something close to it. A heavy silence fell over the command center. Finally, Daniels spoke up. The thought director showed us their history. They were engineered to be this way. Is it right to punish them for what they were made to be? Boyd turned to him. You saw the processing center. You saw what they did to the Elysians, what they'll do to any other species they encounter. I know, Daniels admitted. But there must be alternatives, containment, relocation. Goldman shook his head. Their biology drives them to consume. It's not just food, it's how they evolve. They incorporate DNA from other species. That's why they're so adaptable. Which makes them even more dangerous, Russell added. Boyd looked at each team member in turn. We need to present our findings to the Elysian Council. They asked for our help. They need to understand what that really means. The Valkyrie arrived at Elysia Prime to find the situation worse than when they'd left. Several sections of the planetary shield had failed. Voran ships had landed on the planet's surface, establishing footholds on 2 continents. The Elysian capital was in chaos. Refugees crowded the streets carrying whatever possessions they could. The crystal towers that had once gleamed in the sunlight now looked dull and lifeless. The team was escorted immediately to the council chamber. The elders looked exhausted. 3 seats stood empty, their occupants killed in a Voran attack on the city's edge. When the human team entered, Xerath rose quickly. "You've returned, and with survivors." 37 from Elysia 3, Boyd confirmed. "There may be more hiding in the wilderness, but the colony itself is lost." "What did you discover?" Xerath asked. Boyd nodded to Goldman, who projected images of the processing center and the thought director. "The Voran operate on a hive structure," Boyd explained. "Each invasion force is controlled by a thought director, a central intelligence that coordinates all actions. We managed to eliminate the one on Elysia 3. The council members looked at the images with horror and fascination. "You killed it?" one elder asked, shock evident in his voice. "Yes," Boyd said simply. "And that's just the beginning." He outlined what they had learned: the Voran biology, their consumption pattern, their ability to incorporate DNA from other species, and the location of their homeworld. "We have 3 options," Boyd concluded. "First, we continue to eliminate thought directors one by one. This would take months and would only delay the Voran, not stop them." The council members nodded, following his logic. "Second, we use the data we've gathered to improve your planetary shields. This might protect Elysia Prime, but it abandons your remaining colonies and any other worlds the Voran might target next." Several elders exchanged glances, clearly considering this option. "And the third?" Xerath asked quietly. Boyd's voice was steady. "We strike at their homeworld. We end the threat permanently." The chamber went silent. "You mean extinction?" an elder said, her voice barely audible. Martinez stepped forward. "Not necessarily extinction. We have options ranging from sterilization to targeted elimination of their leadership caste." The Elysians looked horrified regardless of the distinction. "We cannot condone the elimination of an entire species," one elder exclaimed. "It goes against everything we believe." Boyd's patience finally broke. "What you believe won't matter when you're being processed for food. The Voran aren't going to stop. This isn't a negotiation, it's survival." The council erupted in arguments. Some elders supported Boyd's position, while others insisted on finding a peaceful solution. Xerath raised his hands for silence. "We must deliberate on this. Please give us time." Boyd nodded stiffly and led his team out of the chamber. In the hallway, Ambassador Diane Powell was waiting for them. She had arrived on a diplomatic shuttle while they were on Elysia 3. "Colonel," she greeted Boyd. "I hear you've been making an impression." "Ambassador," Boyd replied, "the situation is worse than we thought. The Voran aren't just invaders. They're consumers. They incorporate DNA from the species they eat. If they get enough Elysian genetic material, who knows what capabilities they'll develop." Powell nodded grimly. "The Alliance Council is in emergency session. Several members are questioning Earth's methods." Martinez snorted. "Let me guess. They don't like how we deal with threats." "Precisely," Powell replied. "They want results, but they don't want to know how we achieve them." Boyd looked back at the council chamber doors. "The Elysians need to make a decision. We don't have time for philosophical debates." "I know," Powell said. "That's why I'm here. The Alliance has intelligence reports that the main Voran fleet is gathering for a final assault on Elysia Prime. They'll be here in less than 48 hours. "Then we need to act now," Boyd insisted. Powell placed a hand on his arm. "I've brought the authorization you need. Earth has approved the deployment of Project Omega if necessary." Boyd's expression hardened. "The Elysians won't like it." "The Elysians asked for our help," Powell reminded him. "And sometimes help isn't gentle." Inside the council chamber, the debate continued for hours. Finally, as night fell over the capital, Xerath summoned the human team back. The council looked deeply divided. Some elders wouldn't meet the humans' eyes. "We have reached a decision," Xerath announced, his voice heavy. "We cannot support an attack on the Voran homeworld. Our species has never condoned such actions even to save ourselves. Boyd started to object, but Xerath held up his hand. However, he continued, we also recognize that we cannot survive without taking action. Therefore, we ask that you defend Elysia Prime with whatever means necessary, short of extinction-level measures against the Voran species. It was a compromise that satisfied no one. As they left the chamber, Boyd turned to his team. They've tied our hands while asking us to save them. Powell shook her head. Not exactly. They've asked you to defend Elysia Prime by any means necessary. They just don't want to know about anything beyond that. Boyd understood her meaning immediately. The Voran fleet will be here in less than 2 days. We need to move now. What's the plan, Colonel? Russell asked. Boyd looked at each of his team members. We're going to the Voran homeworld tonight. The Valkyrie dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Voran home system. The ship's stealth systems engaged immediately, making it virtually invisible against the backdrop of space. On the main view screen, the team saw a rust-colored planet orbiting a red dwarf star. The surface was a patchwork of massive hive structures connected by what looked like organic roadways. Dozens of egg-shaped ships orbited the planet. Home sweet home, Martinez muttered. Goldman studied his sensor. Readings. Population in the billions. The hive structures are even larger than the processing center we saw. And look there. He pointed to an enormous structure near the planet's equator. That's at least 20 times bigger than any other building. The main hive, Boyd concluded, where the Voran Queen must be. Wright looked concerned. Sir, are we sure about this? The Elysian Council specifically asked us not to. They asked us to defend their world, Boyd interrupted. This is the only way to do that effectively. Russell nodded. The projected casualty rate for Elysia Prime is near total if we don't act. Sometimes leadership means making the hard call. Daniels was checking the bioweapon container. Project. Omega is ready. The delivery system is calibrated based on Voran biology from our samples. Boyd gathered his team around the tactical display. We need to approach from the night side. Our target is the main hive. We insert, place the delivery system, and extract. The bioweapon will do the rest. What exactly will it do? Wright asked quietly. Goldman answered. Based on my analysis, it will modify the Voran reproductive system. They'll be unable to produce fertile eggs. No violent deaths, just no more generations. A dying race, Daniels said. Better than an extinct Elysian race, Martinez countered. Boyd looked at each team member. I won't order anyone to come with me. This mission goes beyond our mandate. Anyone who wants to stay with the ship can do so. No one moved. Boyd nodded, unsurprised. Let's gear up. The team donned their combat armor, now modified based on their experience fighting the Voran. Additional protection covered the joints, and their visors had enhanced filters against potential pheromone attacks. The Valkyrie descended through the atmosphere, using the planet's magnetic field to mask its approach. It landed in a rocky outcropping 2 miles from the main hive. The ship will remain on standby, Russell said. I'll monitor your progress and be ready for immediate extraction. The landscape of the Voran homeworld was alien and hostile. The ground was covered in a spongy organic material that seemed to pulse beneath their feet. The air was thick with spores and the smell of decay. Charming place, Martinez commented as they moved quietly toward the main hive. It evolved to suit them, Goldman replied, or they evolved to suit it. Either way, it's a perfect match. They encountered few Voran on their approach. Most seemed to be inside the hives, and those outside were smaller worker drones that paid little attention to their surroundings. The main hive loomed larger as they approached. Up close, it was even more impressive. A mountain of organic material rising nearly a mile into the sky. Openings of various sizes dotted its surface with Voran of all castes moving in and out. How do we get inside? Wright asked. Boyd pointed to a low entrance where worker drones were bringing in food materials. There, we follow the food. The team entered the hive, keeping to the shadows of the organic corridors. Inside, the air was even thicker and the Walls pulsed with what seemed to be a giant circulatory system. Goldman consulted his scanner. The center of the hive is half a mile in and down. That's where the largest life sign is located. The queen, Boyd said. They moved deeper into the hive, occasionally having to hide as warrior drones patrolled the corridors. The deeper they went, the warmer it became. I'm picking up something strange, Wright whispered, checking her communications device. There's a signal coming from the center of the hive. It's not just biological, it's technological too. What kind of signal? Boyd asked. It's a distress beacon, Wright said, surprised. And it's ancient. It's been broadcasting for centuries at least. Why would the Voran have a distress beacon? Daniels wondered. Let's find out, Boyd replied. They reached a vast chamber at the heart of the hive. And there, suspended in a web of organic material, was the Voran queen. She was enormous, 50 feet long, with a bloated abdomen that pulsed as it produced eggs. Unlike the warrior drones, she had an almost humanoid upper body with 6 arms and a head that seemed too intelligent for a mere insect. Around her, smaller Voran attended to her needs and collected the eggs she produced. There, Goldman pointed, to a device embedded in the wall near the queen. That's the source of the signal. Boyd studied the scene. Place the charges around the chamber. We'll set the bioweapon delivery system here. As they worked, the queen suddenly stirred. Her massive head turned toward them, compound eyes focusing with disturbing intelligence. She sees us, Wright warned, like, with the thought director, a telepathic connection formed. But this was stronger, more coherent. Images and ideas flowed into their minds. The history of the Voran in greater detail than before. They saw an ancient race, now long extinct, creating the Voran as biological weapons to fight their wars. They saw the Voran, programmed to consume and adapt, turning on their creators when they tried to implement a kill switch. They saw centuries of the Voran trying to fight their own biology, trying to evolve beyond their programming, always failing, as hunger drove them to consume. The queen's voice echoed in their minds. You come to end us, Boyd stepped forward. You're consuming an entire species. We can't allow that. We cannot stop, the queen responded. It is what we were made to be. The hunger never ends. We have tried to change for 1,000 years. She gestured toward the beacon. This was our attempt to find help, to find someone who could change us. No one ever came. The team exchanged glances. She's asking for help, not fighting us, Daniels said. Goldman studied the queen with new interest. If their creators built in this compulsion to consume, perhaps it can be modified rather than just stopping their reproduction. Boyd considered this. You're suggesting we try to help them rather than end them? Today, we're not your executioners, Goldman said, looking at the queen. We could be your evolutionary bottleneck instead, a chance to become something new. Boyd made his decision. Goldman analyzed that beacon. Right, help him. The rest of us will set up a perimeter. We came here to solve a problem. Maybe there's a better solution than the one we planned. Hours later, the Valkyrie sped back toward Elysia Prime. In its hold was a modified version of Project Omega, not designed to sterilize the Voran, but to alter the neural pathways that controlled their consumption instinct. Will it work? Boyd asked Goldman. The Queen provided the genetic keys we needed, Goldman replied. It should spread through the hive mind network within days. They'll still need to eat, but they won't be driven to consume entire worlds. The Valkyrie arrived at Elysia Prime, just as the main Voran fleet began its final assault. The planetary shields were failing section by section. Boyd contacted Xerath. High Elder, we have a solution, but we need your permission to implement it. Whatever you need, Xerath replied, desperation in his voice. The Valkyrie shot through the Voran fleet, its stealth systems allowing it to reach the lead hive ship undetected. The team deployed the modified bioweapon directly into the ship's ventilation system. Within hours, the Voran attack faltered. Warrior drones became confused, then docile. Hive ships began to withdraw from orbit. In the Elysian Grand Council chamber, Boyd and his team stood before the amazed elders. The Voran threat has been neutralized, Boyd explained. They've been reprogrammed. They'll need to establish a treaty with you for limited resources, but they won't consume your worlds. Xerath looked stunned. You found a peaceful solution? Not peaceful, Boyd corrected. Just less final than the alternative. 3 months later, Boyd stood on the observation deck of Orbital Station Delta, looking down at Earth. Ambassador Powell joined him. The Alliance Council has ratified the Voran-Elysian Treaty, she informed him. Limited resource sharing in exchange for Voran technology. They're already helping the Elysians rebuild their colonies. Boyd nodded. And the other provision? Approved unanimously, Powell replied. All Alliance species must now maintain defensive capabilities. The Elysians have asked for human instructors to help establish their first military in 10,000 years. Who did they request? Boyd asked, though he already knew the answer. Powell smiled. You and your team. They said they wanted to learn from the best. Boyd looked back at Earth. They called us primitive when they discovered us, too violent, too aggressive, but they called us when violence was needed. That's humanity's burden, Powell said. We remember the darkness so others can live in the light. Boyd thought about the Voran Queen and her centuries-long distress call. And sometimes we bring a little light to the darkness. The Valkyrie was being prepped for its next mission. Somewhere out in the galaxy, another species was about to discover that when they begged for aid, humanity sent its best, a team trained not just to kill, but when necessary, to save.